Doreen and Lorraine, we were talking
Yep.
about we are going to be starting today to talk about functional family therapy and what that means for you as you enter this new world of fostering. So, really, the focus for FFT is making sure that the foster or kin family is the treatment. You are the treatment resource. Your support, your being able to provide the structure and consistency in your home is what allows this to be so successful. So part of that is you're central in stabilizing the situation for the child or teen. Everyday positive parenting is crucial. So all those things Michelle and I have been talking with you guys about making sure we're being strength-based, we're reframing all those ideas, and we're really the importance of language and how we're looking at it. And allowing for those pieces to allow some grace in the space as well for both the biological parents as well as the child, so that they can really focus on healing and growing. And remember, we talked about we want to make sure we're allowing for that space to peel back the layers of the onion and see what else is going on. What are those underlying reasons and causes for the behaviors that we're seeing? So, down here it says professional recourses are important. However, at the end of the day, you and your family are central as the child is with you most of the time, is with you most of the time. This creates relational opportunities to help the child or teen, including opportunities to work out struggles for the placement to be successful. So, again, emphasizing the relationship and trust and the communication, really using that and leaning into that to help make things stable for the young person and to address any concerns that come up. Mindy, anything else you want to add with that?
No, I think you've hit it all.
So, goals for today: explain why a new way of working in foster care is important, providing an overview of the FFT foster care model, begin to create a shared understanding of how this new way of working will look, the importance of working on reunification from the start of placement, and how building trust is central in the family sessions, which will be focused on getting to know each other and how to work together. How loyalty from kids to their birth parents play an important role. And again, that was something Michelle and I talked a lot about as well when we say, sometimes you just got to try your best to not take it personal, because they're struggling with those loyalties in place as well and can become reactive. Um, and why do we need the change in the foster care system? We've talked a lot about this too. So the frustration of our kids getting stuck in the system, having these bouncing around from multiple placements because foster parents and the youth not understanding all those different layers and what's going on leads to these multiple disruptions. That's the word or you're always hear when a child is being moved from one placement to another. If a behavior happened, if the match wasn't appropriate, so many variety of reasons, but that's what it's called, is a disruption, and they're bouncing around from multiple placements. The multiple placement studies have been found to lead to academic difficulties and struggles to develop meaningful relationships. And we all know that even for ourselves, if we weren't in a stable place, if we didn't have a home base, that's going to lead to those frustrations. How do you build your community? How do you build your supports around you so that you can have these relationships and feel grounded and be able to move forward successfully? If you're bouncing around and moving a lot, it makes it a lot more difficult. So just something to keep in mind. FFT also finds that the likelihood of successful reunification goes down with every new placement. A part of that you'll see with foster care too is it feeds into every time you're moving a child from place to place, they're starting over. They're starting back at scratch, back at base. And where do you go from there? Now the kid has to retell their story, rebuild that trust, work through all these processes, and it just delays things forever. And because you start to see more of these behaviors come up and they start acting out or being more disruptive, it's going to impact their ability to be reunified with their families or being able to find that permanency resource that they can connect with as well. Mindy, anything else?
Yeah, Nelly, you did a great job. I want to emphasize that multiple placements can really impact the academic difficulties and the struggle to develop relationships. And there are actual studies out there that show that every time a youth moves a placement, it can lead to a 2-year gap in development, academic development, social development, emotional development. And so one of the things that we try and do, even though it might be harder on us adults, is we do talk about, is it better for them to stay in their current school? Is it better for them to stay with their current pediatrician? And maybe it is harder for us as the adults, but when we think about setting a child back 2 years because it's easier on us, it makes sense to make us go out of our way until that child has established that trusting relationship with you, that trusting relationship within your neighborhood, and that we can minimize that 2 year gap for them.
And then just to add to that too, because we see this often too, is we try our best to keep our kiddos in their school placement and district of origin so that they can have that stability. But that's also going to impact them as well if they're moving around different places and further away from the school district, because we don't want to have a kid on the bus for a good 45 minutes or 60 minutes just to get to and from. There have been situations where that can happen, if we're dealing with an emergency, we're trying to, keep the kid in one place and help them, or they don't have any other service opportunities available to them as well. So just things to think about. So Lorraine, you hinted on this earlier too, of the movie Removed. So we sent the links to you guys to watch this, and being able to see that young girl's experience in foster care and how she wanted to tell the story to us so we can understand what it's like for a child and her perspective being removed from her home, all the different layers of what we don't always see or know about when we first meet the young person. There's a lot of times assumptions being made. There are things that we're filling in the pieces by our wildest imagination too, because we're trying to figure it out. And remember, we also talked about the first day, the first week you're with your young person in your home, they're not going to tell you all these things. And she showed that in the movie as well, of like how she struggled with building that connection to open up to the young person, to the foster parent that was in the movie. So what were your thoughts on the movie when you were able to see it, the first part?
I think the first part, it just showed like what happens in the home with her with the abuse. And, she had to be parentified in a sense because she had to take care of her younger brother, and how she was just trying to hold it all together, be that support for her younger brother and for her mom, and trying to dodge the beatings from her dad. So it just showed that she had some, like, she showed resilience as well. But being in a position she shouldn't have been in, trying to be strong for everyone.
Absolutely. And that's one of those hard points, right? It was really hard to watch and to hear the story and see that perspective, because it tugs at your heartstrings because you don't want any child to go through this. But it
Yeah.
definitely highlights the way the trauma, how the triggers work, her loyalty to her family, to her brother, definitely the parentification of her role where she was picking him up, feeding him, changing his diaper. Like she was the one taking care of him. And remember when we did that activity with the moving truck and people are separated and you're losing your family, you're losing your surroundings, all those things. This ties it all together to really see that perspective of how hard it is for our young people, especially a young girl of her age, the worry and the constant stress of wondering, is her brother okay? Is he doing okay? Like what's happening for him? Because she was the one taking care of him every day. And so when we have our young
Right.
person coming to our home, and if they are separated from siblings too, keeping in mind of something like this so that when they're reactive or they're not, talking as much, they're being defensive or shutting down, allowing for that time and space to allow those opportunities to unfold so that they can start to develop the trust and maybe ask some of those questions that no one bothers to ask the kids, because sometimes we overlook the concerns and the stress our kids are under because we feel like, well, all the adults, we took you out of the bad situation. Now you're in a safe home. So we don't need to talk about that. But there's so many more layers with it. And we should ask those hard questions.
Right.
Mindy, anything else you want to add with it? Anyone else wanted to make any comments or anything
Well,
about the
I
movie?
right. That so that this little girl was going through so much that she was saying the one thing that I recall that was the most hurtful, I think, is when she said that the people that is supposed to be taking care of her was actually ripping her apart, something like that, you know? And how scary that must have been, you know, but at the same time she was so focused on taking care of her little brother that until she got separated from her brother, she seemed like she was holding it together, you know?
She was managing, she was surviving,
Yeah.
right? And that's something
And I think,
important to see also is a lot of times how the view for child welfare can be so negative from both biological parents
yeah,
and the children. And although we're well intentioned and we're trying to do the right thing, it's not always received in that way.
yeah. Because in that perspective, even though it might not be the best home or the best situation, it's all they have. So now you become the enemy because you're ripping them apart from something that the only thing they know, you
Hmm.
know, and taking
Yeah.
them to the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And as a child, that's even scarier. Mhm.
Hmm. And I think one thing that I noticed too that struck me in the video was when the police and the child protective service worker came to remove them from the
That
home,
she ran.
how the
Yeah.
mom like ran towards the dad and not towards her child. Her child went in the opposite direction. She ran towards the abuser, you know, which is,
Mhm.
I know it's not uncommon, but it just seeing it visually just struck a chord with me.
Mhm.
Like, are you kidding me? You're gonna, you're not choosing your children, you know?
Yeah, and remember how we talked also though about there's so many things that some of the biological family members may do or choices they may make that we don't agree with, but we also have to
Yeah,
remember we don't know their story. We don't know what they've endured,
right,
what they've survived, and what they've gone through that has led them to this point as well. So allowing for
right,
ourselves to also be able to come to it with you know, that intention in our heads that okay, let me put the judgment aside for a moment and let me try to figure out what else is going on. How do I provide the support without that judgment, which is really hard as humans,
right,
right? Because there's part of us that's always going to be a little judgmental, a little biased, because we're like, well, coulda, shoulda, woulda. But you have to remember also, we don't know all those layers. So allowing for
right,
that space.
One of the
Yeah.
things that this video always
Mhm.
does for me is it reminds me that all of us could be in the same situation and all of us can walk out with different perceptions. And so taking that moment to not project what I think that youth experienced, but really to take that time and understand what their memories are, what their uh, perceptions of that situation were, and work from that place.
Mhm.
and also how your good intention can have the opposite effect. Like when she gifted her that dress, and it kind of triggered that thought. Foster mom was, had great intentions, but that kind of like reminded her of the past, and that kind of created a whole situation, which was not her intention.
Absolutely. And then her reaction was like, well, what just happened here, right? And we
Yeah,
talked about that a lot too, where there's going to be moments where we're like, what just happened? Like, I was trying to do the right thing,
Yeah.
and now this whole thing got turned upside down.
And I
It's
think,
kind of like this scene too where she was trying to read a story to her, bedtime story or something, but that was probably too soon. That was like the first night she was there, and
Mhm.
yeah, that I'm like, oh, that must be so painful, you
Mhm.
know?
and I think everything you guys are talking about really circles back to what Nellie talked about earlier about not taking things personally. Because everything you're talking about, Lorraine, you said it was with the best of intentions, but the youth, the youth's reaction it wasn't about you, it was about what they had experienced and what they
Right.
were able to take in
Mhm.
at that moment.
Mhm. Yeah.
And just
Right.
one thing I just wanted to say when I was looking at the video, like when the little girl, she had that outbreak, the mother didn't, the foster mom, she didn't like go behind her and ask her like, well, what happened? Like, what's the matter? What made you react that way? So that was kind of like, I think she kind of like jumped on that one. Like that would have made me like a little emotional too. But like even my own kid, like sometimes you'll get them something and it'll remind them of like an ex-boyfriend or something, and they start crying, and you like, what the heck just happened? All I did was give you a flower, and they crying about a boyfriend from 15 years ago. So I just think like maybe she should have went after her, because the girl is like of age where she can, you know, even if she didn't say anything, you at least would have knew. Okay, well, maybe something happened. Maybe she had a dress on, or something happened to her mom in a dress. It was just like the next thing. It was like she was on the phone calling, to get her, um, I guess, removed or taken out. So that was a thing that I kind of like. If I was in a situation, like I probably would have went after her, because like I said, with my own kid, I would have did the same thing. It's not like she's a baby where she's just going to continue to like cry like a newborn, and you trying to figure out what's going on. She could kind of like tell you certain things, and as a parent, or you've been around long enough, you could kind of figure out like, okay, something is wrong. Maybe I shouldn't get her any dresses.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
you know
I
what
think,
too, the part where I kind of think she was reaching out to her supports, to
yeah.
say, this is what happened and this was the reaction. And do you have any idea what may be causing this? Or how can we address this?
Yeah.
And they did. They figured it out that she really missed her family and she really wanted to see her brother.
Hmm.
Yep, it showed all those different pieces,
Yeah.
right? And how interesting, because even with the same watching the same movie, we all had different ways of looking at it and
Mm-hmm.
what could be happening, what those parts that were unspoken, and there were just little like things in the video that led you to believe something one way or another. Our
Yeah.
interpretation can be different. So that's
Right.
so wonderful to see that in this discussion too, because that's what you're going to see even from kid to kid and from worker to worker, different perspectives, different ways of approaching the work. So just trying to keep an open mind to it and ask the questions like Crystal was saying too, because you never know. When you're developing that relationship and that communication with the young person, you're going to make mistakes. There's going to be times where you go do too much too soon or not enough right away. And it's really having that fine balance as a parent to say, sometimes trust your gut. Like, when should I go and follow the kid and ask them more questions? And when maybe I should just give them a second, let them go to their room and cool off, and then revisit it afterwards.
Nellie and I were actually earlier today talking about a newer youth that we're working with, and I was telling Nellie his favorite, like, everything is no right away, right? Very just no, no, no. And so one of the things that I've started doing is saying, okay, I hear that we're not there yet. Let me know when we are, or let me know when you're ready, and just leaving that door open. He is definitely a no and an I don't know uh, youth. And so it's for me, it's about putting it out there. And I don't truly think he doesn't know. I think that he is very guarded and he's not there. So it's leaving the door open.
Mhm.
Yeah. Not ready yet.
And so with FFT, it's really looking at what are the things that we can improve. And some of the things that they've learned over the years that we can improve upon is really focusing on children and teens needing a stable foster home, finding that match so that the children and the foster parents can connect and have that relationship, and start working on how do we stabilize a young person, but from the perspective of the family lens. What's going on in the home? How do we increase the communication, the structure, the consistency, so that we can provide that stability for the young person? And in that process, still work on addressing the behaviors, but from the bigger perspective of looking at the family lens and not just the child, where in other modalities, it's often looked at as the child is the problem, the child is the identified patient, client, and we're working on them specifically and what's going on with them. But in this, we're looking at it from the bigger lens of what's going on in the whole environment and what can we do to improve upon the environment and the supports around them to help stabilize them so they have the most possible success. So looking at foster parents, being part of the treatment team, which, Michelle and I have talked to you guys a lot about, like, hey, something's going on, something you're just like, I'm not sure about this. Before that clinician even comes in for that weekly session, call your team up. Let your team know what's going on. Let them know what the concerns are, or letting them know, like, hey, this is what happened this weekend. Maybe we can address this during the session. And so that way the clinician or the family specialist know, like, when they're coming in, what are we going to work on and what are we going to talk about so we can address it? Okay. And then really FFT looks at it also as teenagers needing a different approach than younger kids. Crises are opportunities to work things out together so we can prevent placement disruptions. Visits between the, oh my God, I just went blank. The biological parents and the children and teens are important.
The permanency parent is
Permanency
PP.
parent, yeah. And I was just like, wait, PP, but I know it's biological parent. That's why my brain went there. It's a long day. The permanency parent need help and support to reach permanency and reunification. Reunification needs to be collaborative and worked on from the start. So from that initial phone call, that initial meeting, talking about what is the permanency goal? What are we working towards? And if we're not there yet, what do we need to do to get there? Because there's a lot of times where our young people will come into care and they have an idea, or they may say, there's a lot going on right now and we're not sure which direction we're going in. But all the while, when you have those concerns or questions, talk to your team about it and we'll help figure that out along with you and provide that support and communication with DCF as well to get that information to you. Any questions so far? Mindy, anything else you want to add?
No, I think for me, one of the I try and be strength-based. I know, Nellie, you do too. One of the things is, how do we get to yes? How do we get to making it work? And so for me, it's about that brainstorming and looking at all those different angles.
Mm-hmm. So some targeted outcomes: stabilizing foster placement, improvement of successful permanency placements, reduction of placement disruptions. So again, what it was saying before of looking at the crises as an opportunity. What can we work on when a crisis happens? It's just like when we have a young kid having behaviors. Behaviors are telling us something. There's more to it. So a crisis is also, you can look at it in the same lens of, what's going on here and what can we improve on? What are they trying to tell us when this crisis is happening? So we can use it as a place of opportunity to work on things and strengthen the relationship and prevent a disruption from happening. Reduction in youth problem behaviors. FFT has also looked at how well this works, this model, with youth that have juvenile delinquency or criminalized behaviors or aggressive behaviors, because they're not looking at it from labeling the young person as the problem. It's really looking at it from that family lens to try to help improve the system and improve their environment. Improving school behavior and stabilizing school placement, and reduce trauma symptoms, both individually and within the family functioning. And this also, like Michelle and I had talked to you guys about, the beauty of this is also that the same team that's working with the young person in your home gets to work on all this with you and get this young person practicing the skills and then translating those skills to their permanency home. So whether that's with their biological family, adoptive resource, a kinship resource, that same team follows the young person to the next home and reunification and continues to work on those things with them. So when, say, that same little blip or issue that was happening in your home may resurface in their permanency home, it's saying, hey, remember what we talked about and what we worked on previously? Let's try to do that again. Mindy, anything else with this? So thoughts and questions, because we're going through a lot really quick. Nope. Okie doke. And I know you guys, if there's a thought or a question, you guys are going to tell me. So it's all good. So what the FFT model provides: more involvement of the foster parents to help create a stable placement through training, FFT family sessions, having a voice through weekly questionnaires, support for the bio parents and caregivers to stay connected with their children and work on reunification, a team that stays throughout placement and reunification, just like I was talking about, having those same people so that this young person doesn't have to tell their story all over again and start from scratch. The FFT therapists, FFT family specialists, and foster parents working together in a structured way. And after reunification, the permanency family receives FFT, functional family therapy to create stability, and being trauma informed in all activities. So the teamwork, who's part of this? Oh, Mindy, were you going to say something? No? Okay. So part of the teamwork, the permanency and bio parents, the foster family, the FFT foster care therapists, the family support specialist, the school individual therapist and psychiatrist, and along with that, with school individual therapists and psychiatrists, I would add also DCF, because there's also all that constant collaboration and work with the DCF team to know what's going on with the young person and with their case. But usually the FCA team as well will provide that support in being able to ensure that the communication is happening and that it's fluid. And then when we hit those roadblocks, we help support in that way as well. Each team member plays a different role while working together. The target of all team efforts is working towards reunification.
Real quickly, one quick question. Wouldn't the teacher be a part of this team or somewhere play some kind of role?
So that's why I just said school, encompassing like the
Right.
counselor,
Okay,
the
gotcha.
teacher,
Yeah.
those support staff that are in the school. And often when we're having those school meetings, there is usually a teacher present, or sometimes the counselor's present, or even the principal, depending on what's going on with the young person.
And this is each case could be a little bit individualized too, right? There may not be an individual therapist yet. Maybe there's a mentor, right? Maybe there is an APRN instead of a psychiatrist, right? So there are some nuances to this, but this is really sort of just a general overview. And then the other complicating factor here is that people will use different names. Our profession is absolutely alphabet soup. And so sometimes you'll hear us called FFT. Sometimes you'll hear us called TFC. Sometimes it'll be FCA. Sometimes it'll be therapist. Sometimes it'll be clinician. And so never hesitate to stop someone and say, what does that mean? Or is that Nellie? Are you talking about Nellie? Because I call her this. Never ever hesitate.
Yep.
Because
we
have to do it sometimes in certain meetings. We maybe and we've been doing this for years. Because it is alphabet soup.
Absolutely. And the target of all team efforts is helping the foster family work together and stabilize placement, and just make sure that everyone's talking and communicating. So our little happy circle, smiley face in the middle, our young person is being supported as best as possible, knowing that the adults around them are communicating and working in their best interest to stabilize. So we're all on the same page, just different roles, like Mindy was saying. So the role of the therapeutic foster parent is to give the child and the youth a home, guidance, and help, participate in trainings and meetings, join in with FFT family sessions, and keep the FFT therapists and the program specialists informed on anything that's coming up. So like that's what Michelle and I have been talking about, like anything that you're worried about, you're wondering about, you're just like, I don't know who I spoke to. I'm confused right now, because there's a lot of people that are involved in this young person's life. So at any point you can ask those questions, and anyone who calls you and talks to you, ask them their name, their full name, and their role, because sometimes it feels like a whirlwind. There's too many people calling and people coming to your home and asking you things. So ask the names and their role and where they're from. We've had a lot of meetings, Mindy and I, with people that they think that they spoke to us, but they spoke to DCF, or vice versa. And it's no fault of anyone's own. It's just that it gets confusing sometimes when you're dealing with multiple providers. The role of the child and the teen is to join in with the FFT sessions And teens are really important. It's really important for them to join those important meetings and be part of those sessions because we want to make sure our young person has a voice at the table and that their concerns are being heard. The role of the bio and permanency family is to work with the DCF and FFT teams to get ready for reunification and really working on that from jump. So having that first meeting, being able to talk with them, get to understand what the goals are, where are we in the process of reunification, what are some of the concerns, and how Michelle and I also have talked to you guys about in those disclosure meetings with DCF2, being able to ask those questions that you're wondering about. There's not always those opportunities on paper to say, hey, this is what works for the young person at night. This is what's going to help get them settled. Do they need a nightlight? Do they need a sound machine? Are they going to wet the bed? What kind of foods do they like? Are there video games they like or certain cartoons that they like or don't like? Or what activities do they enjoy? Basketball, jumping rope, sidewalk chalk, coloring, really trying to get an idea because one thing doesn't fit all. It doesn't work for every child. So just trying to make sure you're asking those questions and being able to see how much information you can get. So it helps support you and the young person in your home. Any questions so far? Hi, Sam. Hi, Tony. Thanks for joining.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi,
So
Sam. It's so nice to put a face with a name. We spoke on the phone. I'm Mindy.
Okay.
Say hi.
How you doing?
I love it's like she's elbowing. Hey, use your manners.
So the role for the FFT therapist is organizing communication of all involved, guiding you through the phases of the model, and doing those weekly family sessions in the home. They're the go-to person for questions and guidance. And the role of the family specialist is they do the foster parent training and monthly meetings, organizing visits with the permanency parents, helping with practical issues if needed, and contact with school. They also support the permanency placement plan and hold sessions with permanency parents. And they're also another go-to person for questions and guidance. At no point will you have a family support specialist or clinician, you call them for help and they're gonna be like, no, you shouldn't really call me. Maybe you should call this person. They're going to help provide that guidance and support. And if they don't know the answers, they will make sure that they can follow up with other members on the team to get those answers for you.
And if they ever say that to you, call Nellie immediately.
She says that and I laugh because I'm like, no one on our team would do that. But if God forbid they did, yes, please call and let us know what's going on so we can address that as well. So support for bio parents and caregivers to stay connected with their children. The first meeting should happen ASAP. Now we know life happens. Sometimes it'll get delayed if there's a young person getting placed on a Friday or there's an emergency. Things might happen where it can put a delay, but we always try to make those first meetings happen right away so that you are best informed on the young person coming to your home and how to help assist them in that transition. The meeting with permanency parents, FFT therapists, and the FFT family specialists. Expectations will be discussed and agreed upon, and the start of support for bio parents to help them meet the requirements. Usually, Mindy, what is it, like 48 hours that the clinician will go to the home usually for intake?
48 business hours.
Yeah. So if a young person's getting placed in your home, usually the same night of placement, they will come out to do that placement agreement, and then usually follow up with intake like 2 days after or so. But again, any point in time that you're like, what's going on here? Give a call, ask the questions. Any questions so far? Nope. Okay.
Quick, I need clarification.
Mhm.
So, something happens and the child needs emergency placement. The person they're placed with, are they informed as to the situation?
So
Or
remember early on, Michelle and I talked about the difference between like a planned placement and emergency placement. And sometimes
Right.
with emergencies, we may not be able to have that timely disclosure meeting to get that information to you because say it's an emergency placement at 4 o'clock and we have limited information. We try to get as much information as we can from the DCF team. And then we'll call you and let you know the information and say, hey, do you think this will work for you? Would you be able to accommodate this young person even for a night or a weekend, whatever the case might be?
Yeah.
And then you would tell us yes or no, or if there's other questions that you are wondering about so we can get more information. And then the young person would come to your home, and then quickly thereafter, we would definitely set up a meeting so we can get more information. So that way, you know, and we know as well who this young person is and get a better picture so that they can be supported in your home appropriately.
Okay. Thank
Mindy,
you.
anything else you want to add to that piece?
So I do want to add, regardless of whether it's an emergency or whether it's planful, these are people, right? These are kids, and that they may not have had a trusted adult to tell things to up until they're living in your home. So there are always circumstances that you could be the first one finding things out. And
Mm.
so we will do our absolute best to tell you everything and get all the information we can. But we need to realize that there are times that you will be the first one to learn something about a youth. And it wasn't that anybody was hiding anything from you, it was
Yeah.
that this youth has built such great trust with you that they now feel comfortable to talk about something.
Okay. Good answer. Thank you.
So the focus on reunification and permanency, the FFT team will work and help everyone involved to create those helpful relationships, overcome struggles and build hope, help the foster parent to show concern and respect to the bio parents, help bio parents to accept the foster parents as a resource and not as a threat, help everyone understand complex feelings from the foster youth coming from loyalty. Remember, we've talked a lot about that loyalty and how that plays a huge role and struggle for some of our young people when they come to your home and they're feeling pulled from being happy in your home, but also wanting to be back with their bio parents. And helping prevent youth feeling stuck in the middle, because it comes up all the time.
The dog has joined the class.
He's always so cute. So visits are essential for the permanency parent and the children and teens to maintain their relationship. Michelle and I talked a lot about that as well, of how important it is for these visitations to take place, whether with the permanency parent, whether with their siblings, because it's really maintaining those connections and ensuring that they don't feel like they're being pulled apart or stuck in the middle. They're still being supported and being able to have that relationship and being able to maintain those connections to their home community, their home base. Visits seem to be predictive of reunifications. If we have good, consistent visitation, we know we're working faster and better towards reunification at the end. Regular parent and child visits also are linked to better adjustment and fewer behavioral problems. Again, that's speaking to that connection and maintaining those connections so that it doesn't cause as many disruptions for the young people or so much uncertainty of not knowing when am I going to see my parents next or when am I going to see my siblings next. They know it, that's happening regularly and consistently and going well. So it really does assist with them being better adjusted and having less problems both in the home and in the school. The quality of the relationships of all involved have influence on the quality of the visits. Mindy, you want to speak on that one in terms of what that means of what the quality of the relationships of all influence the visits?
So yeah, the relationship between you and the permanency parent, as well as that permanency parent and whoever is supervising the visit, really do have an impact on how that visit goes. That doesn't mean that you need to be inviting the permanency parent to your house for Christmas, but it does mean that there is some type of positive communication. So it could be that you are able to compliment that, you're able to say nice things about the parent to the youth. It could be as simple as, oh my goodness, your mom gave you such beautiful blue eyes, right? It is letting that youth know that the parents have done something good, something positive, as well as if there are siblings that are not living together and they're going to the visits, sometimes that can be difficult because, as we know, siblings fight for parent attention. And so, how is that going? We want to talk about that. And we want to encourage the sibling relationship, but understanding that it can be a difficult dynamic. And so, how as parents, can we support that? Can we connect with the other foster parent and have natural sibling visitation? Maybe meet up for dinner. Maybe take the youth living with us to the jazz concert that their sibling is playing in, right? Just maybe phone calls, or never mind, kids don't do phone calls. Maybe FaceTimes, right? Those types of natural sibling where we can help promote that healthy extension of their relationship. Anything else, Nellie? Oh, so what I will also say is that it can depend on who is supervising the visits. If there are parents that inherently have a distaste for DCF due to the fact that DCF is the entity that have removed the children, and that can obviously be felt by the youth when, if that distaste is coming out in the verbal conversations, things of that nature. So there are other entities that can supervise visits. Again, Alphabet Soup, QPC, RTFT. It may, in fact, need to switch from a DCF person supervising the visits to an outside program if the visits have certain needs. And we'll certainly, as we learn about that, keep you apprised.
Any questions regarding all that?
You were saying something about taking pictures, or taking pictures with the other siblings and letting them put it up in their room. I thought that was a really nice idea.
Mm-hmm.
And if they come to you and they don't have that, absolutely let your FFT team know that's something that we can work on with the DCF team, or whoever's supervising the visits.
Remember we talked about like how nice that is for a kid when they're coming into their room, and like say if they want to have pictures of their family on their nightstand or something, just so that they have that connection and that remembrance of that. And when we talked about, unfortunately, a lot of kids in child welfare, they don't have pictures. They don't have these things following them all the time. And so being able to ensure that we're also supporting that so that they can have those connections with family. It's a lost art because kids now, everything's on phones. Everything's a screenshot, a picture, a social media post. And so actually having something tangible is always really helpful. I think for parents too, especially when we talk about our parents that are losing their kids, thinking about that as well, pictures of their visitation.
Yeah, I think Nellie, you hit it on the head. It is a lost art. And I'm going to age myself, but a long time ago in child welfare, we used to do something called life books. And it was lots of pictures, and we would collect letters from people. And it was, it really did capture everything that youth went through, and all the memories they had. And it also, actually, the life book would end with a future section. And so, what are my goals for myself? Where do I want to go? And so that would be something that Nellie said, it could follow them. It was theirs. They could take it with them, whether they went on to an adoptive home, whether they went on to a permanency resource, back to a bio parent. And so all the memories were right there. But with the invention of the digital, that has fallen by the wayside as well. But I think for a lot of kids, it really helped with that tangibleness.
Absolutely. And as a worker, when I was doing a lot of the field visits and home visits and visitation supervision with families and siblings, It was always a thing that I made a point of taking pictures because the kids didn't have a lot of pictures and they wanted pictures. They wanted those things to be able to have with them in their room. So I was always the nutball taking pictures, and people always judged me because they were like, "You're being crazy." And I was like, "No, I'm saving memories, even of experiences, because being in a foster home, being removed from your family can have so many negative connotations, but there's still a lot of beautiful memories being made within that experience. So how do we help capture it so that we can reinforce that there's some positive stuff that's coming out of here? Maybe it's a new experience. You never rode a horse. Maybe we're taking a picture when you get to ride a horse, or you've never gone to a trampoline park. We'll take a picture of you at the trampoline park. Things that we take for granted because we think every kid gets these experiences, every kid gets to do these things. And then when we have our young person in front of us that hasn't had that exposure and that experience, let's take a picture of it and let's try to capture it. So moving on to challenges around visitations, the FF team will understand the challenges and offer support to all involved. It's really around that anytime you're worried, you're anxious, you're thinking, you're just not sure which way to go, left or right, up, down. And with parenting, you really don't know which way to go. There is no right way 100% of the time. It's trial and error sometimes with parenting and trying to get to know your young person to see what else can we do, what else can we, and learning from our mistakes. When we make our mistake, and we've talked about this too, parenting has changed generationally. We're at a place now where we can own our mistakes and say, I made a mistake, like next time maybe I could do this, and owning that piece and showing that and role modeling it to our young people as well. It can be hard for foster parents to see the post-visit struggle of a child. That's really hard and surprising and shocking the first time, because the kid goes to go visit their family and gets to see them, and you would think they'd come back really happy and excited because they had a great visit. They were able to see their family. But there's all those other underlying feelings of now, like, ugh, I'm not staying with my family. Like, I'm not going home right now. I'm coming back to your home. And even if I like your home and your home is awesome, like the whole setup, it's still not my home. It's still not my bed. It's still not my parents tucking me in. And so being able to work through some of those struggles is really important. And you're going to find yourself sometimes taking it a little personal, or feeling protective or angry towards bio parents. Like, say the visit doesn't go well. The bio parent said something, did something that wasn't appropriate or helpful for the young person, and now you're seeing that play out as well at home. You got to talk to the team about that. Get the support needed so that we can work through those processes, because it's going to get rough. Sometimes there's also bio parents that really find the visits emotionally challenging. Sometimes as a result, we can see parents that will cancel the visit, not show up, or cancel last minute. And you have a young person who's been looking forward to a visit. They know they're supposed to go see their parent on that Monday or Tuesday. And now the visit day came and no visit is happening, and trying to work through that as well. Bio parents can also feel very watched, and wondering or worrying about, what are other people thinking about me? Because how awkward and uncomfortable and unnatural is it for you to be with your child and have an outside pair of eyes watching you the whole time? Ooh, I don't know if any of us have ever been in those situations, but I, for one, I know if I was in that situation, how weird. I would really be like, oh my God, are they thinking like what I'm saying or doing with my kid is inappropriate? Did I touch her the right way? Did I move her hair off her face the right way? Because it just feels very unnatural. Anything else with that, Mindy?
Yeah, so just circling back up to that first bullet point, if this is the first time a child is entering care or it's an emergency placement, we often see those first few visits, particularly on the youth side, but quite often on the bio parent side, that leaving the first few visits can often be a trigger, and it can be a recreation of the removal. That separation feels just like that initial removal. And so those first few visits can be, we just need to be extra conscious of that after those first few visits.
And again, youth can feel stuck in the middle, that push and pull of I'm happy being in your home, but I still want to be with my bio parents. And even if in my bio parents' home, it wasn't the greatest situation, it still was, it was normative. It was home, right? So developing a workable relationship between the permanency parent and the foster parents, creating understanding and really working through that with the family support specialists as well in the team, trying to work on the first supervised visit with foster parent, meeting the bio parents, trying to create that structure, that communication, and the expectations of what each person will be doing as well.
So at FCA, we do not have you meet at that first supervised visit. We have created a separate structure. And so that is slightly different for us. We will create a meeting where if it's deemed appropriate, if that we want to make sure the bio parent is doing what they need to do, and that they're in a place where they can receive a meeting. But we will create a separate adults only, um, usually via Zoom, with FCA present, with hopefully a DCF worker present as well, where we can just do introductions. We can have some pre-formed questions for you and the bio parent to sort of get to know each other. We do not want the child involved that first time, just just so that the child doesn't have to sense that awkwardness, doesn't have to sense
Doesn't have to feel stuck in the middle.
yeah, exactly. Thank you, Nellie.
Just so that they don't have to feel like I'm between both of them, and where does my alliance and loyalty lie? Absolutely. So thoughts and questions. Anyone, an example of how foster parents and bio permanency parents meeting each other help the youth in your care?
I think you can kind of find out some things that maybe you don't know that only the parent knows about their child, and that could be helpful in how you support the child in your home, and also ways to make them more comfortable while they're with you, because the parent may have certain toys or certain things in their room or whatever it is that makes them feel at home or makes them feel comfortable that obviously you're unaware of, and they're them sharing that information with you. You can bring that into your home to make them more comfortable.
Also, I could add to that, finding about talking with the parents and finding out about their routines, any helpful routines that make their morning go better or their bedtime go better, or those everyday things that we do. And yeah, things that they're different, their favorite foods and things of that nature. So you can try to make them as comfortable, like Lorraine says, as possible.
I think like even like working with the parents to let them realize that you're part of the team and that you're working with them for everything to work out better. You're not against them. You're there to help, and you're on their side. And anything we could do to help, like maybe they could tell us a cake that they like or some dish that they like, and to make the child comfortable, and we can learn from the parents and the parents can learn from us, I think.
I remember that video that we watched of the foster parent with the bio mom, and he talked about all the work they did to show the young person that they were in it together. They were trying to support one another and working towards reunification. And granted, he had a different relationship, and like he even invited her into the home, and he was having her cook dinner once a week in the home so that the child felt some type of way. But it's the benefit of that young person being able to see that the two adults in their life that are there caring for him or her are also being able to talk to each other and being able to communicate without animosity, without drama. And that really shows a lot of that role modeling of how do we communicate with others? Even when things aren't so great and the situation can be awkward, how do we work with one another?
And Doreen, I love how you talked about the routines, right? I mean, we know that kids function so much better when they get a good night's sleep. Bless you, Nellie. When they eat their breakfast, right? And so if the more we can carry over for them to try and keep that consistency, the hopefully the better they adjust. And the little things, right? Do you read them a bedtime story? Do they sleep with stuffed animals on their bed? Do they not? I worked with a 7-year-old who his bed his bed had to be completely covered with stuffed animals in order for him to be able to sleep. Part of it was a sensory thing, but if we hadn't talked to the parent, we wouldn't have known that. And I don't know that we would have ever figured it out.
Yep. Absolutely. Even down to like, do they use blankets? Do they use a sheet? Because those are different nuances that we all assume someone will do it the same way we do it, but they may not.
Night lights.
Or down to even in the shower. Do you guys listen to music in the shower? Or is it quiet? What's comforting? What's not? Because everyone does things differently.
I thought Nellie was actually asking
I
us.
sing in the shower, singing in the rain.
I was like, do you really want to know what I do?
I sing.
Doreen, you are a rock star in your bathroom.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts on potential challenges with the visits?
I think I mentioned this yesterday as well, is the impact on the child if the parent cancels or just doesn't show up to the visit, and having to deal with that aftermath and trying your best to support them, but them knowing that the only thing they need in that moment is to see their parent.
And depending on how long they might have been separated, what this situation, the parent might be a little bit defensive because, DCF came and took their house apart or whatever the case may be. But everything is different, and a lot of the times, well, I wouldn't say all the time, but they probably want to blame somebody rather than take the responsibility for their own action. Might be possible.
Yeah. It's human nature, right?
Yeah.
If you back me in a corner hard enough, I'm gonna get defensive.
It's almost like a waiter or a waitress. If they bring the wrong food to you, the person that's receiving the food gets on the waiter or the waitress that is cooked wrong. And meanwhile, it's the people in the kitchen that cooked it wrong, but they get the weight. So sometimes we might be the waiter or the waitress and we get the weight and we didn't even take the child from them. So we just got to be patient and just like, okay, I'm going to take the weight for this and let's try to, work through it. Even though we didn't do the wrong, we're not the chef. So, but the waitress always get the blame.
I love that analogy.
I gotta keep that one and store it up here because that was a great way to like break it down. Sam, that's your own chef's experience talking there.
Yes.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, guys. So, Mindy, you want to take this one or you want me to do it?
I'm happy to give you a break.
Sure.
So why family sessions? So the FFT model Nellie emphasized before does come from that family lens. It focuses on the family. So it incorporates everyone living in the house, and we understand that if there's other young kids in the house or teenagers in the house, they may have their own things to do, but hopefully they'll join every now and then or for parts of the sessions. understanding that the dynamics of everyone in the house are super important. But we want to make sure that you're learning how to manage living together, that you're getting skills to work through the issues that are popping up. And so that's why we want as many people of the household to come together as often as possible. So there's 3 major phases of FFT. We have that phase 1 called engagement, and that's where we're really going to be looking at what is that youth's story, and what is your story. We ask the youth all the time, why are you in foster care? Well, do we ever stop and tell the youth, why did you want to be a foster parent? Or from the clinician, why do I want to do this work? And so we're really going to take that moment to talk about our stories, and also to really talk about those complicated feelings and set up some of those boundaries and expectations. Then we're going to move into what we call behavior change. And that's really working on those skills. We want to learn them, we want to practice them, and we want, by that end of as we're moving through that phase, we want everybody to be able to do it less and less with the help of the team. And that last phase we call generalization. Well, now we want you to do it in all different situations. And we want you to do it as new challenges arise all by yourself. And we're kind of taking the training wheels off here, right? And so that's the phase that we're going to start backing out. We're still going to be there. We're a phone call away. And but we're going to start stepping down a little bit in our session frequency. And again, we're going to invite everybody to join in those sessions. And occasionally there's going to be some exceptions. We may need to talk to the youth about something that was disclosed alone, or we may need to talk to you alone about a question we have. But we are always going to bring everybody to the table every time. And that also, we are going to make time for adult conversations, text, emails, phone calls. That's all going to happen so that we can have those adult conversations with you as well. Miss anything, Nellie?
Nope. So involvement of the foster parent. So first steps, the initial intake and orientation session. So like we were talking about earlier, that really happens early on. And that's where you'll meet the clinician or the family support specialist and start working on what are the expectations, what are we going to be working on, when are we going to be meeting, and talking about getting going, getting to know each other. It's meeting with everyone who's living in the home, signing of the placement agreement, going through all the paperwork, because it's child welfare. We got a lot of paperwork. So there's always forms and documents to sign, and they will do that at that first intake session. And then following that, they'll start setting up those family sessions. For the most part, the clinicians will do the same time each week. They will work around your schedule, and taking into consideration what the young person's doing, their activities. If the youth is really young, maybe their sessions are earlier in the afternoon, when they're coming out of school, so they're not disrupting bedtime. If they're an older teen, maybe they're doing it a little later, so it's not impacting anything with the family and the family routine and structure of the home. So they'll start setting up those family sessions and the start of the support with the family support specialist as well. Go ahead, Mindy.
No, I might be too early. I might be jumping the gun here, but we understand, and if this was already talked about, please, Nellie, interrupt me. But we understand that you have to make dinner. We understand that you may have another youth in the home that you have to make sure changes for soccer practice and they come out with their shorts on backwards, or their shin pads on their arms, and you need to attend to that. We recognize that there is a life outside of the FFT session, and so if we need to do our FFT session at the kitchen table while you are boiling the water and breading the chicken, we we can accommodate that. But what we do expect is that participation while you are multitasking. Does that make sense?
And that's something we have touched about on that before, in parts here and there, Michelle and I, in talking about like, we're going to meet you where you're at. And the same thing how we've done even these trainings where we get it. Life is going to happen. There's going to be times where you're going to be a few minutes late. You're going to be doing something else. You got to come off camera. It's the same thing for our family sessions, understanding that maybe you're sitting there folding laundry while we're all talking. That's okay. We got to multitask and get through life. We're not there to add another burden or barrier to anything getting done. We're there to help provide the support and work on the treatment and be able to work as a family. And part of that means letting life happen while it's going on, and having that flexibility on both sides.
I have a question real quick that
Mhm.
just popped up in my head. So in order to do respite, let's say I'm thinking it through now because those pieces need to be there. My son's girlfriend, would she have to take the entire same training I'm taking, or is there like a respite training that's yeah, is there a difference in the training and preparation?
So are you talking about like your son's girlfriend being the person providing respite care?
As a possibility.
Oh, okay, so as their backup. So
Yeah.
Mindy, my understanding is that they would just have to do the background checks.
Yeah, so they would need to complete the background checks, and they will need child specific training. So would the child that's placed in your house will want to someone, either Nellie, myself, Michelle, or someone from your FFT excuse me,
Okay.
FFT team will want to talk to them to make sure they're comfortable with parenting the
Right,
specific
right,
youth. And then if they're going to come to your house and stay, there
right.
it is just the background checks. If you want the child to go to their house, then we
Mhm.
would need to do a walkthrough of their house.
Right. Make sure it's safe and whatnot. Okay. All right. Thank you.
No worries. And I'm glad you asked the question because others may be wondering too and haven't brought it up. So thank you for that.
Yeah. But for respite only, they don't need to do the full class. And FFT or can go out to the home and just do a check-in. But they wouldn't. It would be just, it's a session, but it doesn't go as like it does when they're with you. It's a little bit more of a check-in than a full clinical session, if that makes
So
sense.
it's providing that support in their home and seeing that things are going well and do they have any questions, concerns, or things like that. But we wouldn't do essentially a clinical session in the home while they're there because the treatment has been happening with you in your home and with the young person. So then it doesn't transfer over in that same capacity when it's a respite care.
Right, but we can talk about the coping skills or a specific
Mhm.
situation that happened.
Yep. So, like Mindy was talking about, phase one is really about the start of the family sessions and getting to know each other, trying to really talk to the young person, and you as well, and trying to get you guys to have that connection and that alliance with one another, focusing on building the trust, and getting to know what was like when Mindy was talking about what was the noble intent? Why did you want to become a foster parent? What was the drive behind that too, so that that young person can see and hear from you why you're offering them a place in their home? Because we know our young people and our especially our spicy teens who are like, you're just in it for the money. You just do this for the money. And we all know who when we do this work, there's no money there. So it's not there for that. So let's talk about why are we doing this? What drives us? Because that's always important for our young people to know and understand and be able to hear it from our perspective. Because I think it changes their view as well of the situation. And also for the young people, having that opportunity to have their voice heard, tell their story, tell why, what brings them into foster care, what really sucks about the situation, what's okay about the situation, what do they want, and asking those questions so that we can build that alliance and that trust from the beginning.
Yeah, and I think that in doing that, we as the adults may have a different understanding of why that youth is in foster care, but we go with their version. That is their perception, that is their understanding, and that is the story that they are living on in that moment. And so we don't dispute it.
Yep. Absolutely. And it's really important to highlight that too. Like, it's not about disputing it or saying, no, that's not really why you're in care. It's because of this. And this is what we heard in court, or this is what we were told by DCF. It's really saying, okay, I'm hearing you. This is where you're at. And let me meet you where you're at and take those baby steps along the way with them on this journey. So some topics in that first session are really about what we were talking about, sharing what's important to know about each other, creating a safe space where trust can start to grow. In daily life, there will be a lot of nice moments and challenges, struggles and disagreements. Understanding more about each other's behaviors will help build the trust. And it's also like talking about, hey, this is what really gets under my skin sometimes. And you can also share what gets under your skin sometimes, because it's talking about what are the expectations? What are we, let's lay out this foundation in the home from both sides as well. In phase 2, we're building trust by working things out together. And so that's where Mindy was talking about behavior change. The therapist will help with talking about what goes well and where the struggles are, help with new ways to work on problems that occur in daily life, teach problem solving skills, and help with communication strategies. And again, according to the age, and where, because when we always talk about chronological age and developmental age, meeting them where they're at. We're not going to tell a young person who struggles with those abstract concepts, talking to them about, let's think so far ahead in the future. We need to get more concrete. Let's go step 1, step 2, step 3, and really break it down so that there is that ability to comprehend and process and move forward. And really using that opportunity. And like when we say, let your clinician know ahead of time, like if something's going on, because then when they come in for that session, they can start to lay the groundwork of like, hey, we're going to start talking about this. And when that young person maybe has some apprehension to open up and share things, we can use that also in our sessions to say, hey, well, this was, I heard that, we were talking about this, or when a situation like this happens, what would you do? And start working on that problem solving skills and thinking a little more ahead of like, how could we address those situations? Mindy, anything else you want to add with this one? Okay.
No, it's really, again, it's about laying that groundwork and finding what works in the home and working together towards it. So,
Yep. And in phase 3, it's really about repetition. Let's start working on everything that we're working on, continuing it, talking about when the struggles come up, how do we make those positive changes? What's worked before? Let's try it again. And like Mindy was saying, we start to take off those training wheels. So we start to say, we pull back a little bit. Our session frequency is not every single week anymore. We'll start to pull back to bi-weekly or once a month as things are stabilizing and things are going well in the home. So that you guys are all working together on building that confidence, working together, feeling safe and stable, and still working on towards reunification. But when reunification is not possible, we still are in the picture. It's just the session frequency will start being reduced as well to only when needed. But we will definitely work with you and talk with you about that all along the way in preparation. And no point does our team ever say, we're good, you've completed treatment and we're not going to see you anymore. We're just going to come like once a month. We will not do that. We will start to gently break, take off the training wheels and start to not have reduce the amount of visits that we're having with you guys. But we are always a phone call away. So if anything ever comes up, you let us know and we can come back into the home.
and you will always have somebody from Family and Children's Aid that is assigned to your home that is checking in with you. So even when that session frequency is, is down, there you still have a point person.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get rid of us. That sounded really evil and threatening. I'm sorry, it wasn't meant to be that evil.
She just neglected to add a muhaha at the end. But yes, we're always just a phone call away. And family voice. So the questionnaire for everyone, because this always comes up and it's such an interesting and fun part of FFT. It's called SISs, and What that stands for, do you know, Mindy? Because I cannot remember with our alphabet soup.
Is it the session something satisfaction session?
It's okay, so SIS, I cannot remember what each letter stands for. I will have to get back to you on that because I'm having a really bad brain fart. But what it is every week you're having a survey done at the end. Both the foster parent and the young person, the clinician will hand you this survey, and it's the questions like you see on the screen. So like one of the questions, for example, is in general, how are things going in the family in the last 2 weeks? Very bad, not so good. Okay, there may be some improvement. Good, things are much better. Very good, things are very much better. Or the next question, how much progress did your family make in counseling? Very poor, poor, average, significant, good. It's giving everyone a voice in the treatment process. The foster parents fill this out and the young person fills this out. The only time we will not ask a young person to fill this out is if they are a young person that has verbal limitations, or they're too young and they're not able to comprehend this and do that. So like our 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds wouldn't be doing this, or our youth that are on the autism spectrum that are not able to answer these and engage in that capacity. But this is really about collecting information in a structured way so that it gives the clinician some feedback. How are sessions going? Are we creating an alliance? Are we hitting and are we all talking the same language? Are the goals and what we're wanting to address during sessions actually being addressed? Or do we need to tweak something along the way? Mindy, anything else you want to add with that? You're still thinking about what it means?
I've just literally been sitting here going session something satisfaction something session like
Session improvement survey. I don't know. I'm creating something now. Mariah's going to kill us. Really, guys?
Yep, we're gonna get yelled at.
Don't tell anyone on us. So, any worries about having family sessions or concerns?
I just feel it'd be interesting. It's just something new, and I feel it'd be interesting. I did deal with parents with children from the group home. So I kind of a little bit, but not the way this is. So I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, so just to clarify, when the family session happens in the foster home, it is the members of the foster home. When we're looking at the reunification piece, it is the FFT team doing the work with the with the permanency family. And so we don't have the foster family and the bio family in the same family session, but we will ask for, as we talked about, the meetings, to have joint meetings. If the relationship progresses and you guys can do phone calls or exchange texts or something of that nature, then that's great too. So the family work focuses on that specific household.
And it's
I
okay.
myself, I don't think I would have a problem with it. It's all a part of helping the child or helping the family to reunify. So it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
I think.
It's also important, though, to acknowledge some of the uncomfortable feelings that can happen with this.
Right.
Because it is, if you've never been exposed to therapy or you've never done therapy or been in this, it can feel very awkward and put you in a very vulnerable feeling of like, oh, so now we're going to talk about me too and how I was parenting. Like, this is going to be a little rough. And so we want to make sure that as a team, we're always talking with one another and providing that support, because we're going to have to talk about some of the hard things. And that could be something the child did, something you did, something the child said, something you said. And how do we tweak it and make things better so that everyone is feeling supported and in a safe environment? And there's a lot of vulnerability that comes with therapy. And so I just want to put that out there too, because while we know we're all going into this with the best intentions, it's also different, and it could be very exciting, but it could also be very awkward and uncomfortable too, because it's happening also in your home. So I just
Right.
want to acknowledge that.
Hmm. So, but it's expected, and I'm sure, naturally, most people will be uncomfortable, but you work through it, and
Mhm.
you figure out how to make it work for the child.
Mhm. Absolutely.
That's what I think.
Mhm. So being trauma informed in all activities. So we were talking a lot about this, Michelle and I, with you guys, about how do we work on, how do we talk about the effects of trauma on the development of children, how it impacts their brain, how it impacts their social well-being, their emotional well-being. So just always remembering to keep those things in mind. And also remembering the 3 R's. Remember we talked about was relate. Oh my God, I'm having really bad brain farts today. So it's Mindy, help me out with the 3 R's.
Regulate, and
Reason?
yes.
Yeah. It comes up later in the slides, I promise. I'm sorry, it's late at night. So putting those ideas into practicing, and it's hard, it's challenging work, but having the team there to support you, and the young person to work through those 3 R's and work through each situation as they arise, so we can create the most best successful outcome for the young person. Um, Children deal with complicated feelings coming from loyalty with parents. We've talked a lot about that too. Sometimes it's hard to accept good parenting because it feels like they're disloyal to their birth parents who are not able to provide that to them. So you got to really think about that. You're providing a good home, the structure, the consistency, and while it feels good, it can feel really uncomfortable too, because then it's a highlight of this is not what I was getting at home sometimes too.
Nellie, can we go back to the other, you don't have to move back, but the
Mhm.
previous slide, one of the bullet points that it really emphasizes, that FFT, we understand that lifes. We understand that there could be days that you're scheduled for a session and something happened at work or something happened with another family member, and you just don't have it all to give. Communicate that. We're talking about, we all need to meet where the child, where they are at. Well, you are an important part of the treatment too. We have to be respectful and meet you where you're at too. And so please communicate with your team, about when life is lifing, because we also recognize that if we are pushing too hard in a session on a day that you are not ready, that's going to backfire as well. And so I want to, just recognize all of that as well. That is part of the process too, that there are ups and downs for everybody and nobody expects perfection.
Thank you, Mindy. So sometimes very now I'm thrown off. Thank you though, Mindy, because I was like, that was a really good point
I'm
with the
sorry.
ups and downs,
I
because I
tried
did
to get
overlook
you,
that
but I
piece.
didn't want to interrupt you. And I was like, but we can't go too far without talking about that. I'm sorry. I
Oh,
didn't
I
mean to throw you
appreciate
off.
it. It was so important. So sometimes very angry with birth parents, although tempting to agree, it's not helpful. So really remembering, like, so sometimes you're gonna feel that aligns with your kid. If they're having a rough visit or they're feeling some type of way about their birth parents or someone hasn't followed up, yeah, you might want to be like, absolutely, because you're validating their feelings and being like, yeah, you know what, they suck. They didn't do this. They didn't, they said they were going to do this. They didn't follow through. It's not going to be helpful to do that, because we have to remember also they're still their parents. And it's almost that feeling like, in your family, you might talk crap about your sister, but anyone else does it, it's going to be a problem. And so you got to remember that too. And with our young people and their kids, like, I might be feeling some type of way about my mom and dad, but you can't feel that type of way too, because there's going to be an inevitable fallout from that. And sometimes conflicting feelings and changing opinions is a normal process of figuring it out. It's complicated. So we know for yourself, for the kids, one day things might be going well, things are, I'm feeling this way. And then the next day, whatever it may be, circumstances, environment, hormones, things can change very rapidly. And so allowing for those processes to work out. And while it may be confusing, just remembering that it's part of the process. It's complicated. So this little bubble, sometimes it moves around on my screen, Mindy. I don't know why, but usually it's down here. But emotional, existential level, not rational, makes it hard to understand. I don't know why that bubble moves around so much. Helps them understand their parents not capable. It is not them. You want to take this one, Mindy?
Sure. And I just want to, watching a youth come to their own realization that their parent may not be capable of parenting them is actually quite enlightening. And, you know, like Nellie said, that they will vacillate back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And so letting them go through that process, because them getting to that realization by themselves, when they get there, it really helps them accept their situation as opposed to someone telling them. So when do our youth feel the most stuck and put in the middle? When adults are talking badly about each other, when they're overhearing that you don't think their parent did a good job raising them, or when they overhear that their parent is stupid for not showing up at visits, right? Those types of things. It really does put that youth in the middle. Conversely, when they're at a visit and the bio parent is saying, "You can't like your foster parent. Don't listen to them. Don't do this. Don't do that." That really makes the youth feel confused, because like we talked about, they may love the experiences they're having with you. They may appreciate everything you're doing, but now they're being told, "I can't have these feelings." And when they're not allowed to like visitation, when they come home from a visit and you say, "Oh, how was that visit?" or, "Oh, I bet you had a bad visit," that really confuses them a lot. And so asking neutral questions, "How'd that go?" and letting them tell you and saying, "Oh, thanks for sharing." Very neutral responses. I would also encourage that after visits, you have a set routine. You know, they come in, they have a snack, they have 15 minutes of music time in their room, and then you talk, right? Giving them that space, letting them process those types of things. Am I going? Sorry.
No, it's whatever. We're going with the flow. Me and Michelle do this all the time to each other too. So don't quotes from foster parents. As foster parents, we've had to come to grips with the fact that our foster children will always remain loyal to their birth parents. No matter how much they suffered at their bio parents' hands, they remain loyal to them. Another quote: "We have the responsibility of portraying our children's birth parents correctly. We want our children to know it is not their fault that they were removed from their bio parents, but neither do we want to portray their bad birth parents as bad people." Any thoughts about those? Thoughts or questions about any of this stuff so far that we've been talking about?
So with that second one of the things that we here at Family and Children's Aid are really big on is reminding everybody, including you guys as foster parents, that nobody else makes the decision besides a judge. And so that takes that pressure off, that it isn't their fault. It isn't their parents' fault, right? That it is not DCF's fault. There is a judge involved, and nobody is higher than that judge. I hope nobody ever meets that judge, any of us, but nonetheless, there is a judge.
Thoughts or comments?
I think it just goes back to what you were saying, Nellie, that, you know, I can talk bad about, like you said, the example was your sister, but you can't talk bad about her. So just knowing that, like you said, their loyalty is always going to be with their bio family. And you're the new person in the situation, to make sure that you don't create a rift or a barrier between you and the youth by speaking out of turn and speaking bad about their families.
It's a hard place to juggle those pieces, right? Because there's going to be moments where we're just going to be like, ooh, because it's so quick to fall into that part where you can just be like, oh, they did what? What happened in the visit? Nah. And you just like fall into it. But really remembering like how to separate from that so that we don't get sucked into it, and we're redirecting it and reframing it and really having more of those, like Mindy was saying, those neutral responses, so that they are allowed to vent and talk about what was going on and process it without us feeding into it. And sometimes that, like I've always said, for parents with kids also, sometimes ask the kid like, do you want advice this time, or you just want me to hear it? You want me to just listen? Because sometimes our kids come to us and start talking, and if we're so running with our mouth, you get the immediate eye roll of like, oh, it's turned into a lecture. I didn't want to hear all this. So remembering like, hey, sometimes ask that question with the teens, especially, do you want advice on this? Or do you want me to just listen this time? Because it definitely helps allow for that, you know, to open up or to fall back. Like, which way do we want to go on this? So this next session, we're going to be highlighting the importance of being trauma informed and how the relational roadmap works, provide information about important relationship skills that can be used with children and teenagers, and create a safe environment through parenting and relationship building. So we've done this before with Michelle, but what are words that come to mind when you think about teenagers? What are some of those words that we
Boys, boys, boys.
Complicated.
Complicated? Mm-hmm.
Sometimes rebellious.
Right? Some people think about teenagers and they're like, ooh, you think about a teenager, you're like, they're gonna give me a headache.
Trying to
But
find themselves,
I was just going to say that.
trying to find out who they are, and you know.
Right. So common stereotypes of teens: moody, self-absorbed, risk-taking, self-conscious, difficult behaviors. And I don't remember which session it was that someone was like, oh, you see, that's Sam, that's why I talked to you when Samantha was on here. That's why I talked to you about those teenage girls. I don't know about that, right? Because right away it brings something up. But there's truth in the stereotypes, and there is more to the story. And we've talked about that as well. And Mindy, I love that example you've shared before. Can you share it again of like, what is it when we look at behaviors for a young person and behaviors for a teen?
Yeah. So what I talk about when we're all comfortable parenting certain things, right? So what I talk about is that when Doreen, actually, I think you and I had this conversation, that when we talk about younger kids, their brain is at such a place where they don't have the expressive words, and so their feelings, their emotions come out as actual behaviors. They kick, they scream, they throw things because that's where their brain is. Whereas with a teen, it generally comes out as words, even though we might not like those words. It can come out as yelling, it can come out as cursing. And that, so what are we the most comfortable parenting?
So I love that the breaking it down, because sometimes we're quick to just be like, oh, the younger kids, but it's really about what are we comfortable with? Because whether younger or teenage, they they come with their different challenges and their different stories and different skill sets and ability to redirect or adjust and help support them. So it's really about what are you comfortable with, and which one will you be able to adapt to and be flexible with as well? So if teenagers feel secure enough to explore and learn, their brains will develop the skills like problem solving that we associate with maturity and independence. The challenge for foster parents is to not take some of the provocative behaviors personal and respond with the 3 R's. And see, I knew the slide was coming down later on. Regulate, relate, and reason. Thank you, Lorraine, because you saved us. So again, remember the first, regulate, helping the child regulate and calm their fight, flight, and freeze responses. Relating, making sure that we're relating, connecting with the child through an attuned and sensitive relationship. And reasoning, supporting the child to reflect, learn, remember, articulate, and become self-assured. Mindy, you want to take relational roadmap?
Absolutely. So we all create a way that we view the world, our perceptions, and we all create a map based on these experiences of how we interact with one another. And this sets out our expectations of what our next interaction is going to be. And so if we have a good interaction with someone, then it's likely that we're going to learn to trust others and connect in healthy ways. If we have negative interactions with people, then we're likely going to not develop that ability to trust. We're going to be mistrustful and we're going to start struggling with forming relationships. You talked about the attachment cycle, and we talked about the infant who needs weren't met, and so they learn to either soothe themselves and pull away from everybody, or they learned to get really fearful of people because they never knew how to react. And so, same thing, they didn't attach to people. This is that same concept that we're going to build relationships based on our past experiences. And so this youth coming into your home, they're going to attempt to build their relationship with you based on their past experiences. And so we need to work to lay that groundwork of building a different relational roadmap. And this way we can start help their healing process through a new relational roadmap.
Thank you, Mindy. So when children experience trauma within their family, they're left feeling overwhelmed and feeling alone to cope. Again, that goes back to that attachment. Remember when we had the little circles next to each other and it talked about a healthy attachment versus an unhealthy attachment, or when Michelle talked about what you see with the child that is crying and they know that there's an adult that's going to come and help soothe them or change their diaper and get their needs met, versus the child who doesn't have that consistency, doesn't have the adult that's always coming to them, and how they can feel very alone, and they've developed unhealthy ways to cope with that. These experiences shape the teen's roadmap or expectations of how the relationships work. A teen or a child coming into foster care with their roadmap imprinted, meaning they're going to respond to you as a caregiver, sometimes with fear or hurt behind their behaviors, because from what they've experienced, they're assuming and thinking, oh, this is what's going to happen next when I do this. And they're thinking that you're going to react in the way that they've always known an adult to react to them. And so it's going to create that almost like it feels like you're doing it over and over again, but with repetition and undoing some of those and creating the trust and showing them, no, this is going to be different. This time, this relationship will be different. The outcomes will be different. And over time, undoing that imprinted roadmap of what the child was used to.
And so in those beginning sessions with your FFT team, when the team will try and talk about the youth experiences, why they came in, and then also as we're presenting the case to you, we will try and talk about what were some of those relationships in the home. And it's really so that you can understand that roadmap, and so that we can lay that foundation as quickly as possible.
And so it's really so that we can understand the behaviors and how they're connected to the triggers and how we can respond in a helpful way. What can we do to kind of course correct and undo this feeling of like, if X happens, Y will happen. And so how do we make it better so that we don't always have the behaviors and the triggers happening? And sometimes our kids don't even know what their triggers are. They have no idea that, when you do something or look at them a certain type of way, that they're going to have a reaction. They don't always know that. And sometimes as an adult, when you start to observe and see these patterns happening, it's really important to also talk to the clinician about it, so that that can also be something that's worked on during the clinical sessions of trying to look at it differently, and how do we create new coping skills so we can avoid some of those behaviors and not have it play out the same way all the time. Removed part 2. So I know it's hard when you watch both videos back to back to separate one video versus the other one. But in the second one, we really start to see differently what was going on with the young person, and how, when this part, I remember it's like, I love the phone call and the beauty of when she's looking out the window and sees her brother showing up. And it wasn't about she has to pack up her garbage bag full of belongings again to be moved, right? Any thoughts from you guys with the removed part 2?
Can someone remind me the brother's name? Because I never can seem to remember. Does anybody remember?
Oh, I can't remember.
Start with a B.
It does. You're right.
Yeah, E-N.
But
I-
not benign.
Benita, but no,
It's,
I forget. Sorry.
He's always the brother. He has been the brother for 2.5
Yeah.
years. I can't remember his name ever. So, okay, at least I'm not the only one.
It was Benita, sounded like a girl's name too, a little bit.
Mhm. I think what struck me about part 2 also is the fact that, Sarah, the youth, was pushing and pushing, because she said, yeah, I think she even mentioned eventually they'll give up on, like, her previous foster parent. But this foster parent showed her that, like, I'm not giving up on you. Whatever challenges we go through, we're going to go through them together. We're going to work out. And I think, like you said, when she thought she messed up with the dress and that she was calling to get her removed, and then she was surprised that, the brother came for the visit, or he came to reside with them for a little while, like, you saw the change in her, that I think that way she really noticed, like, okay, she cares about me. She cares about my well-being and what's important to me. So I think you start seeing those glimmers of hope, and her feeling like, okay, someone wants me, because that's something she mentioned in the video. Why don't my mom want me? Am I not good enough? So realizing that, yes, you're wanted, yes, you're good enough, and we're going to be here to support you.
Absolutely. And the power of hope. The power of hope, like when hope is destroyed and when hope is rebuilt, and being able to see that through the child's eyes of like, this time is going to be different. It's not going to be like all the other times.
Right.
For
There
me,
were there
it's
were there were peaks of good things happening here and there. And I think her ability to cleave to those things, or to see them, that when they're happening in positive ways, that she said, she at one point she was saying that this is a new normal, when she would see her brother on more often, and it's becoming routine now for her to see her brother and spend time with him, and just love on him. That was yeah, that was very impactful for me.
if we think about her relational roadmap, we think,
Mm,
we look at how so many times over and over, her initial thought was
mm,
that she can't trust the adults.
right.
And right. And that she was the one that was unwanted or bad. And so her roadmap had to be truly rebuilt to be to a place where she could trust.
Right.
Trust and feel loved and feel lovable, right? 'Cause
I was
think
just
that's
gonna say
part of
that,
it
Nelly.
too.
Yeah, we're accept it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So again, like Mindy was saying with the connection, the relational roadmap of a foster youth oftentimes doesn't tell them how to handle fear and stress or how to accept help and guidance. It's a huge one because that's the really tough part. How do I accept it from the help and the guidance from someone I don't even know? How do I know that they're going to do it and they're in it for the right reasons and that I can follow it? A traumatized brain can be overwhelmed for a teen or child. They don't choose to respond. And remember, we talked about that too with Michelle. Like the kids aren't always just going to respond because they're choosing these things. There's sometimes the impulsivity. There's learned behaviors. There's if I do this, this is what's going to happen, or you know, just the reaction. And they're children, they're still developing, they're still learning what's right, what's wrong, what's acceptable, what's not. And kids are just built to test boundaries. We all do. We all went through it as children ourselves, right? That's how you learn the pros and the cons and consequences and what's okay and what's not okay.
And one of the things that about the tweens and the teens in foster care is we're inherently asking them to buck their biology. We're asking them to build attachments and build trust and rely on adults when their development says they should be finding themselves, developing their own identity, and getting ready to launch.
So conflicting. It's like
Yes.
when you ask those high school kids, what are you going to do in college? What are you going to study? They're just figuring out how to use deodorant consistently. It's so overwhelming. Like we have to really remember they're children, and how much pressure and we put on them sometimes, not even knowing that we're doing it. So understanding their roadmap will help you understand behaviors connected to trauma and triggers and respond in a helpful way. Trauma cycle. Mindy, you want this?
Sure. And so we know that a lot of our bio parents have experienced their own trauma, and that often the cycle is repeated, and that I'm not even gonna a lot of the percentage leads to why the youth are now in care. And so in looking at the bio parents relational roadmap, we need to keep that in mind and understand not only I think it was Lorraine before, right? That we know that they're probably angry, they're probably embarrassed that their youth are in care, but they also have an experience of not being able to build positive relationships throughout their life and attachments. And so their family system probably has generational trauma. Again, that's that repeated cycle. So parents often are left feeling overwhelmed. They don't know who to turn to, and they just don't have those coping skills because they have never received the help that they need. And they may not be ready even if you are willing to reach out. And Sam, you talked about being in a place and willing to help them. They may not be ready to accept it, and so leaving that door open for when they get to that point to accept it. One of the things, and I really actually love this quote, that if trauma can be passed down through generations, so can healing. And maybe we need to do reverse order in the FFT. We need to start with the youth and pass it up to the parent. And so we look at it from that reverse lens.
And we've talked about this too, right? With I think it was last night when we were talking about like the whole goal with parenting is always there's stuff that we know our parents may have done to us, around us, for us, that wasn't always great. And when we're parenting our children, we're trying to do better and we're trying to change things and make positive changes. And it's the same thing, like we can start working on this step by step and create these moments of healing for our kids.
Yeah, and I also think about the parents' trauma history. They may be stuck at that point where they can't they can't get over that hill where whatever age or whatever situation that trauma happened, it's like now this becomes their whole reality and they can't get past that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That's so realistic, right? And then particularly, we know that mental health and the stigma around it is really just sort of it's really nowadays just becoming acceptable to get treatment. And I don't know that everyone has moved to that place. And so, Lorraine, you could be getting a parent, you could be getting a parent who is still not able to or ready to acknowledge that they need treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are stuck. It has consumed them. And it has really impacted their day to day in any different way. Sorry, there's a pop-up. So understanding anybody's relational roadmap, it helps you to understand how behaviors, triggers are all connected and helps you to be able to make a more informed decision on how to respond in a helpful way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, all of this really circles back to not taking it personally. And it is really, really hard. But being able to look at things through that trauma lens helps us understand that it is not about us. It is about what is going on for the person that we're talking to.
Any questions or thoughts or anything like that at all with everything that we've discussed tonight so far?
The sound just consistently it seemed to be going lower and lower and lower. I'm like, are you guys just tired?
Oh, the
Do we
voice?
need a cup
Really?
of
No.
coffee? No.
No, maybe it was your computer.
I
I don't know. I
don't
didn't hear it on
know.
my
And
end.
it's not charging. It's fully charged.
Doreen, is it happening when both Nellie and I talk or just one of us?
That didn't matter. I noticed when we got on the the last few slides, it just kept going lower and lower.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Could be I'm going deaf. I don't know. Maybe I'm tired.
I was just going to say, Doreen, maybe you need the coffee.
Yes.
Maybe. Oh,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that concludes our FFT portion of our training, and tomorrow we'll be back on so we can do the next steps. Again, like I said, tomorrow we're going to start off with Samantha going over the organizational parts and next steps and processes, and then because she has to leave us a little early tomorrow, and then Michelle and I will jump into our last section of the training piece. So if
And Mindy,
anything comes
did
up,
you get the paperwork I left for you?
I absolutely did. I got it the very next day. Thank you so
Okay,
much,
thank you.
Doreen.
Thank you. Okay.
So yeah, so we'll be doing that tomorrow. And if you guys think of any questions or things that are come up from now till then, always just shoot a text, an email, whatever comes up, or tomorrow we can discuss it as well.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Nice to see you guys. See you tomorrow.